Bible Answers with Dr. Al Garza.
All right, welcome back to Bible Answers. I am your host, Dr. Al Garza, and I want to thank you again for watching my YouTube video here. It's been a while since I've actually put anything together. I've been working and finishing my book, More Than a Rabbi, which you can now pick up on Amazon. The hard copy is not going to be available for at least until the end of February, beginning of March sometime. So the hard copy won't be available, but you can definitely get the paperback here. Now, I've had a number of questions regarding this book. It was the #1 bestseller on my pre-sale, which did really well, and it's continued to do really well. And I want to thank a lot of people for supporting it, and thank the Lord for blessing it and using it. More Than a Rabbi. Questions that I get about it regarding some of the things that I mentioned in the book is dealing with the Greek myth. And again, I've discussed this on other YouTube, my other YouTube videos, but I deal with the Greek myth in the sense of the language of Yeshua, the true language of he spoke, his mother tongue, the scriptures that they read and quoted from, because it was not the Septuagint. That is a fact, and it's a consensus amongst most scholars in Israel, the majority, and I quote them in my book, and as well as the language of Yeshua, Jesus, and what he spoke and what they read and how they viewed the Septuagint, because they didn't consider the Septuagint scripture at all. And this is important because I deal with that foundationally first, because if you have a certain belief or thought on the scriptures themselves, then yes, it's gonna kind of play into how you interpret the scripture and how you view scripture. So with that, that's why I wrote the book. I deal with a number of issues in here: the fall of man, the Messiah, the grace of God, the true understanding and meaning of grace, not the New Testament Greek version, but the Hebrew foundation for the word and how it's changed throughout Christianity. And I deal with those issues. I deal with John 1:1, the word from not only the Greek, the Hebrew, as well as the Hebrew texts that were discovered, as well as the Aramaic understanding of the Memra, who the word of the Lord is. I deal with specific verses in the New Testament dealing with Jesus being called Theos, God. And I say this because I've spent over 30 years, just over 30 years, in studying the scriptures and teaching and so forth. And as a research scholar, as an academic, my positions have changed as in my earlier Christian walk, because I grew up in a traditional Christian home. So I understand the traditional Christian views. And certain things have changed along the way. Now, my positions have never changed in regards to many of the essentials of how we view the Bible as scripture and the authority behind them, even in translations. The doctrine of the Trinity, the deity of the Messiah, the virgin birth, the resurrection, his return, all those things have been consistent. Now, certain areas within, I might have certain thoughts changes based because of what I've read or studied in the original language of the Hebrew, as well as in other translations. So, for scholars, positions might change on certain areas, and the essentials they have not. So again, and I deal with that some in the book. There's Christian ministers and preachers who think that Jesus was the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament. Completely false. I show the proof from the Hebrew scripture himself that Jesus was never the angel of the Lord. He was the word of the Lord, the one who appeared to Moses, to Abraham, to Elijah, and all throughout scripture, but he was never the angel of the Lord. And I show that clear in scripture. It can't be refuted, specifically with Elijah. So there are some things like that traditional Christian views still hold on to that are wrong and incorrect. And listen, the reason they do, if you're a Reformed Calvinist or you're a specific Christian that holds to certain teachings about Satan, the devil, and so forth, it's part of your ministry. You're not going to change. And you're not going to change their mind if you're someone who's talking to them, because they have a lot to lose and they're not going to risk being wrong. Even though you can point to the inconsistencies of Calvinism and how they are completely flawed in their soteriology of how they understand it from Scripture. And they don't understand Ephesians 1. They don't understand Romans. They don't understand truly the Hebrew Scriptures itself as a foundation of where the truth lies within God's, God's dealing with man and creation and man's ability to choose. They don't understand any of that, and they don't want to. Most of the time because they have too much to lose in their own ministry, in their own church, and so forth. So it's a waste of time to deal with it, in my opinion. Now, some small percentages do come out of it, but it's very rare. Now, people have asked me about this, and I've written books on topics like that. I have a book called Calvinism Challenged, which is doing very well. How the Hebrew Bible, Jewish sources, Jesus, the apostles, and Paul refute Calvinism. And I deal with this from the first century Jewish mindset of how they understood the scriptures, how they understood soteriology, how they understood the fall, grace, and man's ability to choose from many sources in here. I have books on the First Trinity. There's a myth, again, saying that the Trinity is not found in the Old Testament. This book simply deals with the Old Testament and the understanding of the Trinity, the foundation that goes before the New Testament. So this is very important. And again, I deal with a book called The First Satan, Understanding Satan's Devils and Demons. Most Christians do not completely understand where the idea of Satan, devil, demons, not from the Old Testament, from the Hebrew Scriptures, where the foundation lies, and how before the New Testament there was a transition or change from outside non-biblical writings that crept into early Jewish thought, as well as into the Reformed position, the Catholic Church, and all the way down. They don't fully understand that. So they hold on to these beliefs and concepts that are really man-made and man-centered in doctrine and thinking. I always tell everybody, do your own research, do your own studies, look at both sides. I was a Christian and certain traditional beliefs for at least almost 15 years. And then the last 17 years or so, I've changed in certain areas of beliefs regarding like Satan, the devil, and who's in control. Or even with the idea of fall and grace and things that I thought before that I found that I was very wrong on. And based on new evidence, new research, new discoveries, based on understanding the language better and the concept of first century Jewish thought and how the Jews understood the Hebrew Scriptures and the consistencies that's brought through, some of my positions have changed slightly. But again, not on the essentials. My faith has been strengthened in the essentials because of what I found in the language and understanding the Jewish thought and so forth, and maybe some clarity. I always tell people this, look, it's a different mindset when you go to the scriptures, understanding a first century Jew, reading the scriptures of how they viewed it. Not the Greek scriptures, not the Septuagint, which was not in use at the temple or the local synagogues within Judea. It's wrong. Jesus, his language, what he spoke with the quote, if you think it was Septuagint, you're sadly mistaken. That is an outdated mindset, outdated sources, and that's not true. But again, I tell people this: if you are between the East and the West, between what is known in Israel and what is known here in the U.S., there's two different views. And I look at it like this: I believe if take somebody else's glasses, prescription glasses, and put them on, and you'll see things blurry. You can make them out, but they might be blurry. But once you take them off, you can see clear. You can see a lot more clear and more sharper. That is the difference of reading and studying. How the reading, studying the Hebrew Scriptures and the first century Jewish mindset versus a more traditional Christian view that comes much later. That is different. So you need to take off those glasses and view the Scriptures and how they originally understood from the first century, from the Jewish thought, and how they viewed it in their area. Most Christians don't do that, mainly because they are simply don't lack the discipline, or they don't really care about that. They think that, well, it's good enough for me just to know what I know now, and that's it, and that's fine. Some of these issues most of them are not salvational issues, unless you're Unitarian or unless you're modalist or you deny the Trinity or you deny Jesus as the Messiah, Son of God, and all that. Then that could be a salvational issue. If you reject the resurrection and certain things, there could be some issues there. But on non-essential issues like how you view Satan and the devil versus, how the Hebrew Scriptures puts these things in context, or soteriology, or how you view Ephesians or Romans, which, again, most Calvinists violate much of the rules of interpretation when it comes to looking at Ephesians and Romans and other parts of Scripture, specifically the Gospels as well. They violate the Scriptures. They are not consistent in their soteriology when it comes to these passages. And they do not know the Hebrew Scriptures hardly at all, or the first century Jewish thought and mindset regarding these things. It's unfortunate. So again, I spent over 30 years researching and studying all these things, strengthening my own faith, my own personal relationship with God, and I share them with people who want to know. I write and share the things that I have come across. It leads into discussions and debates, which is fine. And I've always everything that I've written or everything that I've talked about, I always back up with evidence, scholarly sources, the scriptures themselves as the foundation, and how I came to these conclusions. So again, I would suggest do your own research. Do not just follow what someone tells you, even what I'm telling you. If you're going to post here and you want to respond to something I've said, please go back and learn my arguments or learn what I believe either from my videos on YouTube or in something I've written. If you just line up a bunch of verses on my comments, I already know the arguments. All right, I like I said, the first 10 or to 15 years, it was traditional Christian thought and view, and I know the arguments. So simply just rattling off verses is not going to help me to respond to you at all. Unless you know my position, you want to refute something I've said from what I've said, then yeah, challenge it, definitely. Even something I've said here regarding Reformed theology or grace or sin or something on my other videos, I don't mind that. But make sure you know my position, you know what I'm trying to say first, and refuting the scriptures that I've brought forth. Everything in my videos, I take what someone said regarding an interpretation of scripture, and I've gone through the corrections regarding and then put them in their complete context. I don't just rattle off a bunch of verses. So I'm open to any discussions or debates on this issue. So please make sure you know my position first and you know it well. But again, these are books that you can find on Amazon. If you just search my name out, Dr. Al Garza on Amazon, you'll see all my books. I've written a number of other language books and so forth on working on a couple of other books on the Torah. So again, it's something that I love to do for myself. Again, it's an independent thing I like to do, and it draws me closer to understanding scripture, and it keeps me engaged. But listen, I want to thank you for tuning into my YouTube videos. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like, share, and if you want to interact with me, you can do so here. You can email me, go to my website, however you want to do it. I don't mind engaging or talking to people at all. So again, I want to thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, leave them here. Again, subscribe, like, and share. And I want to thank you for watching Bible Answers. And I want to say thank you and have a great day and God bless.
Bible Answers with Dr. Al Garza.